I want to start with a confession. There was a point in my life where I was doing everything right. I mean, everything. I was showing up consistently, I was being honest, I was supportive, patient, present, the kind of man most relationship coaches tell you to be. And yet, something was dying, slowly, quietly. Like a fire that nobody poured water on, it just ran out of oxygen. And I couldn't figure out why. Here's what nobody tells you, and this is the part that's going to make some of you uncomfortable. Attraction doesn't care how good of a man you are. Let me say that again because I need it to land. Attraction does not care how good of a man you are. It follows a completely different set of rules, ancient rules, psychological rules, rules that are baked so deep into human biology that no amount of good intentions can override them. And most men, good men, decent men, men who genuinely love the person they're with, are violating these rules every single day without knowing it. That's what this video is about. Not how to manipulate anyone, not how to play games. This is about the invisible psychological mistakes that slowly drain the life out of attraction. And the terrifying part is, the more emotionally invested you are, the more likely you are to make them. Now, I'm going to give you 7 of these. 7 things. But I want you to pay special attention to number 4, because in my experience, number 4 is the one that breaks most relationships. Not infidelity, not distance, not even conflict. Number 4. And when I explain the psychology behind it, you're going to feel it somewhere deep, because you've either done it or you're doing it right now. But before we get there, I need to frame something. There's a study out of the University of Texas. Researcher David Buss, one of the foremost evolutionary psychologists in the world, and his decades of research keep pointing back to the same uncomfortable truth. Women are not attracted to comfort. They're attracted to a specific emotional experience. And when that experience disappears, even if everything else in the relationship looks fine on paper, the attraction follows it out the door. Most men never learn this. They spend years wondering what happened. They replay conversations. They try harder. They become more available, more accommodating, more understanding. And none of it works, because they're solving the wrong problem. You are not losing her because you're not good enough. You're losing her because somewhere along the way, without realizing it, you started doing things that psychologically signal the wrong thing. Things that read, on a subconscious level, as weakness, stagnation, or emotional dependence. And her nervous system responds to those signals before her conscious mind even registers what's happening. That's the game we're playing here. So if you've ever been in a relationship that started electric and then slowly went flat, if you've ever felt a woman pulling away and had no idea why, if you've ever been told, "I love you, but I'm not in love with you," which is honestly one of the most devastating sentences a human being can hear, then this video was made for you. Let's get into it. The first thing is one that almost every man in a long-term relationship does, and it feels so natural, so logical, that you'd never question it in a million years. It's this. You stop having a life of your own. Think about what happens in the early stages. You have your friends, your goals, your routines, your world. She steps into that world and it's magnetic. There's an energy to you because you're not orbiting around her. She's orbiting around something real, something with gravity. And then, slowly, without making a single conscious decision, you start restructuring your entire life around her. Your free time becomes her time. Your ambitions take a back seat. Your friendships thin out. And you tell yourself it's because you care, because you're committed, because that's what love looks like. But here's the psychological reality. Desirability is created through perceived value, and perceived value collapses when someone makes themselves infinitely available. It's the same reason a restaurant with a wait list feels more valuable than an empty one. It's not logic, it's psychology. When you abandon your own orbit to become part of hers, you don't become more attractive. You become furniture. The second thing, and this one cuts deep, is what I call emotional outsourcing. This is when a man begins to rely on a woman for his emotional regulation. His mood follows her mood. If she's distant, he spirals. If she's warm, he's fine. If she seems unhappy, he can't focus on anything else until he's fixed it. Now, on the surface, this looks like empathy, but underneath, it's a transfer of emotional responsibility, and women feel it, even when they can't name it. There's a term in psychology called co-regulation, and in small doses between partners, it's healthy and human. But when it becomes the dominant pattern, when she becomes your emotional anchor, it creates a subtle but powerful imbalance. She stops feeling like she has a partner. She starts feeling like she has someone to manage. And that is the slow death of attraction. The third thing is conflict avoidance disguised as kindness. Good men hate conflict. It feels wrong to them. It feels aggressive, destructive, unkind. So they smooth things over. They swallow their perspective. They apologize when they don't really mean it just to restore the peace. They fold when they should stand. But here's what happens in her nervous system when you do this repeatedly. Attraction, at its neurological core, requires a degree of unpredictability. Research on arousal and attraction, particularly the work of psychologist Erin Aaron, consistently shows that challenge, friction, and emotional tension are not enemies of attraction. They're ingredients. When a man never pushes back, never draws a line, never lets a real disagreement breathe, he becomes psychologically predictable, safe. And safe, in the context of attraction, is another word for invisible. Now, number 4. This is the one I told you about. This is the pattern I've seen destroy more relationships than almost anything else, including cheating. It's neediness that masquerades as love. Here's how it shows up. You start needing constant reassurance. You need to know where things stand. You need to feel secure. You overanalyze her tone, her texts, the speed of her replies. You bring up the relationship constantly, not because things are actually broken, but because the anxiety is unbearable and conversation feels like temporary relief. You say things like, "I just want to make sure we're okay," 17 times a week. And every single time you do this, every time you reach for that reassurance, you are communicating something on a deeply psychological level. You are communicating that you do not trust yourself, that your internal world is unstable, that you need her to manage your emotional state. And women, not because they're cruel, but because they're wired this way, cannot maintain attraction to a man they feel responsible for holding together. It's not a choice. It's not something she can logic her way out of. The moment she starts to feel like your emotional caretaker, something switches off, and it almost never switches back on. John Bowlby's attachment research, Amir Levine's work in Attached. Every major framework on adult bonding circles back to the same truth. Anxious attachment doesn't just make relationships harder, it actively repels the intimacy it's desperately trying to secure. The behavior meant to pull her closer pushes her further away, every time, without exception. The fifth thing is losing your edge, not physically, though that matters too, but psychologically. Your edge is your sense of mission, the feeling that you're moving towards something, that your life has direction and momentum. Early in a relationship, that edge is visible. and it's one of the most attractive things about you. And then, over time, comfort sets in. Growth slows. You stop pushing yourself. The ambition quiets down. And you might not notice it, but she does. Not consciously, maybe, but she does. Robert Greene writes about this in the context of seduction, that sustained attraction requires a sense of becoming. The man who is going somewhere is inherently more magnetic than the man who has arrived and stopped moving. The moment she stops seeing you grow, she stops seeing you as a man she needs to hold on to. The sixth thing is a subtle one, but it's everywhere, and it's what I call over-explaining your value. This is when a man starts justifying himself. He reminds her of what he provides. He lists what he does. He points out how good he is to her. He argues for his own worth. And every time he does this, he's doing something catastrophically counterproductive. He's seeking approval. And no one is attracted to someone who is auditioning for their affection. Confidence, at its most fundamental level, is the absence of the need for external validation. The moment you start campaigning for your own value, you have already conceded that you're unsure of it, and she feels that concession before your sentence is even finished. The seventh thing, and this one is quiet, slow, and absolutely lethal, is the disappearance of polarity. In the beginning, there's a clear energetic difference between you and her. You bring a certain energy, directional, grounded, certain, and she brings hers. And the tension between those two energies is the engine of attraction. But over time, in the name of equality, in the name of being emotionally open and vulnerable and collaborative, which are all genuinely good things, many couples accidentally collapse that polarity. The masculine energy softens, the differences dissolve, and what's left can be beautiful, warm, and deeply loving, but it's not sexually charged, and both people feel it. David Data writes about this extensively, the idea that polarity is not a power dynamic, it's an energetic one. When both people occupy the same emotional space, the magnetism disappears. It's physics. Opposite poles attract. Identical poles repel. This is what nobody is talking about in modern relationship content, and it's what's quietly suffocating the attraction in millions of otherwise healthy relationships. So where does this leave you? I want you to sit with something for a second. If you watched this entire video and recognized yourself in 2, 3, 4 of these, that doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you a bad partner. It makes you human. It makes you someone who loved someone and let that love turn into anxiety, and let that anxiety quietly rewire your behavior in ways you never intended. But here's what I need you to hear right now. Awareness is not enough. Knowing this information changes nothing if you don't make a decision in this moment about who you're going to be. Because the men who watch a video like this and walk away the same are the men who end up having this same conversation 5 years from now, in a different relationship, wondering why it feels the same. The shift is this, and it's not complicated, even if it's hard. You have to become, once again, a man with a center. A man whose identity is not negotiable. A man who loves deeply but does not disappear into it. A man who can be emotionally present without being emotionally dependent. A man who is going somewhere and makes it irresistibly compelling to go there with him. That version of you is not a fantasy. That version of you existed before the anxiety crept in, before the relationship became a source of fear instead of strength. That version of you is still there, and every single one of the 7 patterns I walked you through tonight is reversible. But it starts with a decision, right now, not tomorrow, now. The men who have the relationships they actually want are not the men who had better luck or better circumstances. They're the men who decided, at some point, that they were no longer willing to operate from a place of fear. that they were done shrinking to avoid conflict, done abandoning themselves to keep the peace, done outsourcing their emotional stability to another person. They decided, and everything changed. You have that same option right now. And if you're serious about this, if this video landed somewhere real, then there's something you need to watch next. Because everything I talked about tonight is what you're killing, what's going wrong. But there's another video that goes into the how, specifically how to rebuild psychological attraction once it's started to fade. What to actually do in the next 30 days if you can feel her pulling away and you don't know how to stop it without making it worse. That video covers something most men never figure out, a specific sequence of behavior changes that, when done in the right order, can shift the entire dynamic of a relationship. Not manipulation, not games. Pure psychological understanding applied with intention. It's right here. Watch it next. And don't skip the middle, because that's where it gets real.